You are listening to another episode of Geek USA, a podcast dedicated to the nerdier side of music, movies, and television. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about Dream Theater's seventh record, Train of Thought, their ode to all things heavy metal. All right, Carl. So it's 7:45 in the morning where you're at. How are you doing this morning, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Still recovering, but still feeling better. Hopefully my throat, doesn't get to sounding like Darth Vader sometime today. So we should be good.
Awesome. Well, on that note, we are going to be talking about Dream Theater's ode to all things heavy metal, their seventh record, Train of Thought, this morning. So before we get started, why don't you hit me with your initial thoughts and maybe your memories of this record?
I think my memories of the record were, it was coming after 6 Degrees, which in my opinion is probably the best album that they have, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. So it was really good.
Yes.
So it comes after that. And I don't think the album was as good, but I was really enamored with how heavy it was when I first heard it. And that kind of made up for it. I think had I been a little more objective, I might have even been a little let down. But it was much heavier, and it's got some really funny moments like rapping, so that's cool. And aside from that, though. And I'm sure we'll make fun of that more than a couple times before this is over. But it was a good mix. It's really heavy, and it was a really good kind of signaling, I guess, for a lot of other heavy stuff that they would try to do hereafter. I think that there's a few times they tried to get heavier, and maybe it worked and maybe it didn't. But that's kind of my first thought was, hey, this is really heavy, and it was, and was really good to listen to too.
Wow, that's like one of the best ones of those you've done. You took the words out of my mouth. I agree that, given the context of the time it was released, I was geeked out on this record. And, after Train of Thought, or after 6 Degrees, this was such kind of a one-dimensional record, but it really gave you it was kind of like 6 Degrees had given us a taste of Dream Theater as maybe a modern heavy metal band to be reckoned with. So this kind of like doubled down on that. So for me, a guy in his mid-20s listening to, prog metal and stuff, this initially felt like a welcome thing from the band, and I was totally into it. I would be lying if I said that record had a lot of staying power. I think that, and we'll get into this as we kind of dive into the songs, I initially was totally blown away by just how heavy every song was and how it just didn't really let up. But then the more you kind of, maybe dived in and looked under the hood a little bit, you started to see that maybe some of the magic was missing, but that, that's neither here nor there. My first memory of this, this record came out in November of 2003. And at the time I had just started dating this girl, and I was really into her, and I was trying to impress her. You know how when you first start dating somebody, like, every date, every phone conversation, every car ride together, it's you trying to be the best you can be, right? So
Yes.
This record had come out, and for anybody out there listening to this podcast, most of us, if not all of us, are male. So I would defy a female to email us and say she's listening to this, other than your wife.
It's funny. It's funny because every time a woman or somebody with a woman's handle, follows us on Twitter or adds us or follows us on SoundCloud, I get really excited to check out, who this person is. And it's always a sex bot. It's always like a bot trying to sell like a webcam website or something. Like you click on a profile, it says, and it's always like some bad English, like me into project you doing visit my website, and then it's got like a URL to it, and I could just like picture like it's some like 50-year-old fat, Russian guy, or somebody, or the Czech Republic setting up like a website in the name of this like fake woman. The only other women who like actual legitimate women who follow us there are women who listen to our Star Trek casts, and they're legitimately female, I think, and they'll follow us on Twitter. But that's pretty much it.
So, anyways, I had been dating this girl a short while, and this record came out. And I forget what we had to do, but so this record came out, and I was working at a record store at the time, and I got it. And unlike a lot of the other stuff up to this point, I had no advance. This record, there wasn't a lot of pre-hype release. It kind of just felt like it was coming out of nowhere. The song "As I Am" had been released shortly before the record, and I thought that song killed. I was like, oh man, that's a great opener. It's maybe a little bit more trim. It reminded me of something that maybe would have been on Falling Into Infinity in terms of like how the song was arranged, but like just a lot heavier. So I was super excited. So I have this CD, and we had to go somewhere, and we had like a long car ride, like a 50-minute car ride after work that night. And I was struggling, Carl. I had the ultimate decision to make. Do I play this record, which will completely out me as just a dyed in the wool nerd, right? Like there's just no getting around it. Like I'm a super Dream Theater fan. I can tell you how much I like listening to, Jay-Z or whatever, but like, let's just be honest. I'm a nerd. My favorite show is Star Trek. I love Dream Theater. You're way out of my league. So anyways, 10 minutes into the car ride, I pop the cellophane, I pop the disc in, and because I just can't, it doesn't matter. I need to hear this. And she's polite about it and I know it's not really her thing, but I think the song was "Honor Thy Father." It must have been about like, half hour into listening to the record. She's like, so this is like what new metal sounds like, right? Oh, so that was, and
No.
Whenever I think back on this record, like that memory of her saying, this is what new metal sounds like. And just like the way she said it so innocently, like, so like this is, cause like in her head, this and Limp Bizkit were like the same thing. And that might be the best anecdote for how I feel about this record. So.
Well, Jim, can't you picture the rap, the very short rap that it is on here? Can you not picture, or have you ever tried picturing like Disturbed doing that? I'm just saying it could. Some moments maybe could, but very few.
I wanted to be indignant, but with the benefit of retrospect, there are moments with every band who has a long career where there's missteps or maybe even miscalculations that are usually born of good intentions, but ultimately fall flat. And that might have been one of those moments. And her asking me that, I couldn't like. They're not really new metal, but this probably isn't the first record I should have played for you. Their last record was amazing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, what do you do? So.
Moral of the story, never try to oppress a girl with Dream Theater. Just never do it.
Yeah, her favorite band was like Modest Mouse or something. It was just so ill-advised. The mistakes we make when we're young men. So she just made that my private thing. I'm just going to go in the bathroom now for an hour and listen to this record. Leave me be. So I'm going to take you back in time, Carl. So do you recall the band releasing "As I Am" as a promotional single before this record came out?
I know that they did. I think I might have been working at the record store with you at the time. I don't remember. No, maybe that was too early. I don't know if I ever actually heard it as a single. I probably heard it via you, one way or the other. But I do know, that they did release it ahead of time.
So put yourself in the headspace of you as a guy who's like 20, 21. 6 Degrees was a slam dunk. We both said we did a 2-hour podcast where we just couldn't stop talking about how much we love that record.
Fan-wanked all over it.
So you hear "As I Am" as like the next taste of what's coming. What are you thinking at that moment? What does that make you feel like you're going to get from Dream Theater?
Honestly, if you know Dream Theater by then, you're probably just thinking that they're trying to do another Pull Me Under, and it's probably not that indicative of what we're going to get on the album. But trying to think, that was 2003, and it's over, it's 14 years later. So I don't know what I would have thought about it 14 years ago. I just don't remember. Now, if I heard them put a single out, I'd be like, they're just doing a single. The album will be a little different. But I remember liking the tune, though. I remember what I thought, because you and I had a conversation about this. I thought that, great, they're going to give us an album that was a bit more like Awake. And I thought to myself that, the song was prog, but the song itself wasn't necessarily all over the place. They were kind of maybe going to do some more darker, shorter tunes. I think that's the conclusion I kind of came to.
Which after 6 Degrees would have been a logical course of action. So I'm going to take you back in time. So March 10th of 2003, the band starts what is going to become the writing and recording process of Train of Thought. Now, at the time, in interviews, they specifically said that the song The Glass Prison was kind of a touchstone for them. So they went into the studio as they had done the previous album with nothing prepared. No demos, no pre-writing. They're just going to book some time and go write a record and then hit record. But the thought going into it was, when we played Glass Prison on the last tour, people love that record, like that song. And maybe let's try to specifically maybe focus in on making something a little heavier. So I think as Mike Portnoy said, quote unquote, they wanted to make a balls to the wall record. And they wrote this album in 3 weeks, which was like a record for them. And I remember reading about that at the time and being like, you wrote a whole record, lyrics, melodies, song arrangements in 3 weeks? Wow, that's fat. Okay, cool. Maybe that means there'll be a bunch of really short, trim songs. That's kind of cool. And then they went and recorded it. And the idea for the record, it wasn't necessarily to be modeled on anything specifically, but a lot of people over the years have cited Master of Puppets or any of the classic metal records, Number of the Beast. The record ended up being a 70-minute, 7-song adventure that had an ebb and flow to it that felt very much like one of those classic metal records, kind of setting you up with the shorter to the point opener and then having a longer title track type song. And then there's an instrumental on there. There's a lull in the middle, the big epic song at the end. So the record was, without a doubt, at that point, the heaviest thing they'd recorded, not only in terms of metal, because Awake's very metal, but sonically. John Petrucci's using 7-string guitars in every song and tuning down on the songs he's not using 7 strings. And, even James LaBrie's vocal approach was really kind of, it felt like they were trying to make a contemporary metal record. So Carl, before we dive into the individual songs and performances, how do you feel Dream Theater did at accomplishing maybe that goal of making a modern metal album?
I think they did pretty okay. There's when you say modern metal, that can mean a lot of different things. I tend to find that there's a lot of cheese in metal and all incarnations of metal. And I don't think modern metal is any different. And there are some cheese on this album. So I think that it doesn't fit their goal. I don't think as they're trying to make a balls to the walls metal record. A modern metal record, sure, it's got some heavy riffs to it, the melodic singing, and then it's got some really kind of cheesy elements. So I don't think it fits the balls to the walls thing. But modern metal record, yes, it definitely could fit within metal within 2003 for sure.
So the album opens up with the 6 Degrees ended on a final chord, and that chord swells into the first track, As I Am, the 7-minute long kind of ode to the band and kind of reaffirming, and John Petrucci penned the lyrics to this song, but kind of reaffirming their confidence in themselves. Very famously, the song is inspired by a lot of things, but notably the tour the summer before that Dream Theater had toured with Queensryche, there was a lot of anecdotal stories that things didn't go well and the bands didn't really gel. The guitarist Mike Stone at one point was trying to give John Petrucci tips on how to play guitar. And so there's a lot of name checking, in the lyrics. It's a kind of different kind of lyric for them. You don't really often hear, but a song like this focused and lacking metaphor from Dream Theater, but I think it works. And the song, to me, the best way I could describe As I Am is it felt like a really, just a way better written Enter Sandman. That kind of kicking the door down anthem statement. It's not the fastest thing on the record. It's not the slowest thing. You just want to pump your fist to it as you're listening to it. Great riff, great chorus, really good vocal performance from LaBrie. And the solo, up to this point, Carl, you had never heard John Petrucci play so fast. He was obviously stepping his game up. So give me your thoughts on As I Am.
Yeah, just like you said, it kind of fits that same. It kind of fits that same purpose, right? It kind of fits that same thing as Pull Me Under. It kind of just it kicks off the album. It gives you something digestible but still Dream Theater. It's not the most proggy thing they've done. It's not like a simple, easy beat rock song, right? It's a little more complicated than that. I am actually kind of curious if up to that point, if that is the fastest solo Petrucci did.
I don't think it, but the way it's mixed and stuff, it just feels
It's
like
one
just
of
a
his
blister of
cleanest.
notes.
This is
Yes.
Petrucci gets cleaner and cleaner and more cold and efficient with his playing as time goes on, especially like post Falling into Infinity. It just seems like the muscles grow, and so does his guitar. I guess his cleanness and his like kind of stamina for playing, but it kind of fits that purpose. It really establishes the album. At least it tries to. The album itself is very different than as I am. I don't think. I mean, the album is very different than every song on there is kind of a very different tune, but it's a catchy tune. It's really easy to listen to. It's very enjoyable, and yeah, the solo. I mean, fast or not, the solo's really good. It's a very
Maybe
good
precise
tune.
is the word I was looking for. Just like you said,
Precise is pretty good.
clinical precision. Like just it's almost like somebody programmed it on a keyboard. Like it's so precise. Like, and that's yes. And at the time, like I was trying to learn a lot of this playing at this point, and these were things that like I was spending hours trying to break down like segments of his solos and trying to incorporate that into my playing. It was very very impressive to me as a young guitar player. Carl, the second song on the record, so As I Am, a big swell of feedback, immediately careens into This Dying Soul, the second entry of the AA suite that began with Glass Prison off the last record. Now, Carl, this is a very divisive record for fans. I have read dozens of times people cite this as the worst Dream Theater song ever written, and I think it's because, kind of in the same vein as Glass Prison, but maybe not as tunefully, this song it never stops. It is 10 minutes, 11 minutes of just insanity. And what I really liked about this song is whereas the Glass Prison kind of starts off this theme that you get with the Mirror, this really kind of brings back elements from the Mirror from Awake. It feels like, in a lot of ways, it might have, at this point, it was my favorite song on the record for a long time. I really enjoyed the way they incorporated lyrical pieces from the album Awake. I liked the kind of Middle Eastern tinge. I loved the instrumental section at the end. Again, was just like the most precise, like cold, like heavy thing I'd heard Dream Theater do. And I think James Labrie again nails this song. And there's not a lot for him to work with here. He's given a freaking a copy of Moby Dick to sing on top of this music, and he somehow makes it all work. Like the most wordy song I've ever heard. Just like so many words. He does it. He nails it. It's heavy. It's aggressive, but in the way he does it, the only thing I wish is maybe there was like a vocal reprise at the end. It does kind of meander a bit at the end, but I think this is a great tune. I love This Dying Soul. I know a lot of people don't, and I get why, but I think it works. And if you're looking for something to do after As I Am, this is like a good way to take it up a notch. So what are your thoughts on This Dying Soul?
I mean, everybody's got different tastes, and there are only so many moments where I'll kind of facepalm myself and say, I can't believe people liked this. It happens a lot in politics where people say, I'm for this issue, and then they say, and I'm supporting this politician. And I think to myself, that doesn't make any sense to me. But music is different. Music is art, right? It's not really quantifiable. So I don't get people really like thinking this is like the worst Dream Theater song. I think it's a very Dream Theater thing to do. This song, I don't think it's really abnormal. Yeah, it's kind of long, but I mean, it's Dream Theater, for fuck's sake. They're kind of long. So yeah, I think the tune's great. This is, I mean, I get how the album flows together. This to me would have been like the perfect album opener, though. If we just take the tune for what it is and we don't take the gelling from one into the other or anything like that, I think it's like such a solid tune. In fact, my biggest complaint with this album is kind of how it carries on after this song. I almost wish they would have just put this song at the beginning and then just repeated it at the end, so that we could close the album out with something better than In the Name of God. But I think it's awesome, and I think that the The keyboard work on it's great. The guitar work on it's great. His singing, they're my favorite moments. All of my favorite moments on the album are going to be wrapped up into This Dying Soul.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, and I was getting ready. I thought you were going to say that, like, you were going to facepalm yourself that I liked it. That's why I was like, oh no. But I'm glad you agree with me. No, I think that, Portnoy, his lyric writing on this song particularly, like, this might be my favorite lyrical entry to the AA suite. I think and maybe it's all the callbacks to the mirror. I just really think this song nails it from start to finish. I really enjoy, again, like you said, the way Labrie kind of attacks the different sections of the song and kind of has almost these different characters. Again, very much kind of doing what he did on 6 Degrees, really making this work, applying what he does to a much heavier canvas. And then Rudis, I love the stuff he does in these first 2 songs. He's obviously, there's not a lot of keyboard wankery. There's no like syrupy solos or anything like that, but all the atmosphere he adds, it's great. There's like all these feedback patches he's throwing in at different parts, and even like whatever he's doing to double up with Petrucci's like lead playing, like that's really work, and it's very percussive. He's got like a lot of really cool percussive things that are going on in the background, like almost like as a rhythm guitarist. It works. Like the band, this 1-2 punch, and whatever order you put him in, like damn. It's if they were trying to make a metal record, they succeeded. The third track, Carl, is another 11-minute long opus, Endless Sacrifice. Now, Petrucci penned the lyrics to this, and it has very much the best I could describe it is it's got like a turn the page type feel. It's like that lonely guy on the road, missing his woman type feel to the lyrics. Whereas, and we'll talk about this the next podcast we do on these guys, whereas perhaps Portnoy's take on being rich and famous is that the fans are ungrateful and they never get enough. I feel like Petrucci's tackle on this topic is much more something I can relate to. He's not necessarily accusing anybody of anything. It's more just, I've chosen this life. The life is kind of hard, but it's worth it. But it's kind of hard, but it's what I got to do. And then, of course, the song itself is, it's long. And in my opinion, obviously maybe modeled after like a Welcome Home Sanitarium type deal, like acoustic intro, acoustic verses, kind of heavy chorus. Maybe not the best riffs I've ever heard Petrucci write. Not a lot for Labrie to work with, melodically, but he does a good job. What are your thoughts on Endless Sacrifice?
I legitimately didn't know that that's what the tune was about, to be frank with you. And I guess I'm in that Crimea River kind of crowd. Like, everybody's lifestyle has ups and downs to it. Everybody's lifestyle has a give and take to it.
Everybody's lifestyle is their death style.
Yeah, my lifestyle determines my death style. If you know what that's from, you're laughing right now. If you don't, you just think we're stupid. But I kind of just, everybody's got to take the good with the bad. You play music for a living and you get paid more money than most people. So I just stop. I don't care. I don't care if that bothers you in any sort of way. I really just don't. I know people who punch a clock for 60, 70 hours a week and barely get by. So I don't care that your plight is that your lifestyle's hard. You play music and you make money and you get to play with gear all day. So whatever. Yeah. Aside from that, the tune's
Amen.
good. Yes. I mean, hey, I'm happy with my lifestyle and the gives and takes with my lifestyle. You're never going to hear me complain about, I work for this place and it's great, but I know people who can't eat. They don't make enough money to buy all the food for them and their family. So whatever. But the tune is good. I like the tune. It's a fantastic track. I mean, and the lyrics, if that's what they really mean, I think the lyrics are at least penned and put together well. It certainly doesn't sound obvious to me, and I'm kind of a nitpicker when it comes to sounds and lyrics. This to me, this As I Am, This Dying Soul, and Endless Sacrifice, to me, these 3 tunes are fantastic. And I start losing interest in the album after this. I think that this is the great first 3 tracks of an album, right? It's almost half of an album. Mm-hmm. Time wise, it's like a third of the album. But the rest of the album is really where it starts getting hit or miss for me. So I love Endless Sacrifice. I can listen to this tune all day. This Dying Soul, I can listen to this all day. As I Am, I can listen to all day. I'm good on that stuff. So, but yeah, Endless Sacrifice is amazing. Again, everybody's kind of firing on all cylinders here. I have to. I don't know what the whole 3 week project was like when they were writing and recording the tunes. I don't know if these first three were toiled over or if they just came really easily. But I got to imagine there was something different about these three than the rest of it, because I really just start feeling like after Endless Sacrifice, the album just kind of starts. The someone takes their hands off the wheel and the car kind of goes straight for a bit and then just goes all over the place.
Well, I think I want to ask you real quick before I get to the next point. What are your thoughts? In that there's a very long instrumental section, has some great solo work from Petrucci and Rudis. I love the trade-offs. What do you think about the keyboard patch interlude where Rudis kind of just, it almost seems like he's just cycling through different patches for 15 seconds in the song?
I just kind of expect that from him.
Yes.
And
it's like my only complaint with the song. You have this super serious song, and then like you just can't help yourself. You just have to do something stupid in the middle of it to kind of break the seriousness. And maybe that's cool. It's always annoyed me. I listened to this song yesterday. I was at the gym and I forgot about that part. When it came out, I was like, God, why? Why would you try to ruin such a great song? I don't know.
It's weird because with Dream Theater, so you've got because like Derek Sherinian is the guy who sits very much in between a Kevin Moore and a Jordan Rudess.
Yes.
And Derek Sherinian seems to pick the 2 or 3 sounds he likes, and he just leans on those. Which, I mean, that's
well, that's what a guitar player does.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, anybody, a smart bass players kind of just find their tune and lean on it, and they don't, they try not to play around with stuff too much. They just kind of let it go. Where you got a Kevin Moore, now Kevin Moore plays around with stuff, and Jordan Rudess plays around with stuff, but they do it in very different ways. Kevin Moore plays around with some sounds, effects, and samples. He's always just trying to really play that atmosphere, right? He's always trying to bring like a certain artsy, I'm going to say the word artsy fartsy sense, and I know that's something you say when you make fun of people. It's the only thing I can think of, but I like it. He brings this artsy fartsiness to it that I dig a lot. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Jordan Rudess, who kind of plays around with his thing. Like he wants to, it just sounds like he wants to hit every patch up on there and see what he can make out of it, which is also really cool. And I said this a few Dream Theater podcasts ago. I said this, we only had Kevin Moore we only had him for like 2 albums, right? We might have had him for 5 albums and thought to ourselves, yeah, buddy, we get it. You're the dark enigma. You do the art, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. And, so we've had Jordan Rudess for this much time. And I didn't notice really my qualms with Jordan Rudess' playing, I didn't notice on the first 2 albums. Now it's kind of getting to, a lot of us are, essentially what I'm saying is a lot of us are guitar rock fans, right? And keyboards are cool. But over a long enough period of time, we might nitpick the keyboards more than we'll nitpick other things. So yeah, I'm kind of getting to a point where like, yeah, we get it. You're a wizard. You play really fast. You double the guitar. That's great. But to be fair, keyboards just aren't as important to me. I might have thought the same thing about a Kevin Moore or a Derek Sherinian. We might get 4 albums of Derek Sherinian and think to ourselves, yeah, great, we get it. You're loose. You play wacky effects. You got the feedback on the key. Yeah, great. Okay, can try something else. But so again, I don't want it to seem like we're just dumping on Jordan Rudess, but yeah, it's a little cheesy the way I think it's a little cheesy the way he kind of cycles through his patches. He tries to find really fun ways of using like sirens and things like that I just think are like, kind of what the F. But hey, it's metal, right? All metal has some cheese to it. I can't think of any metal band or genre that doesn't have any. I mean, maybe you get I had a band name in my head and I lost it, so I won't try to fill that example. But there might be some that get kind of bland and boring that are just guttural the whole time. But for the most part, all metal's a little cheesy, right?
No, those are some really good points. Yeah, I just really wanted to get your take because that was like something that I made a note of when I was listening to the record. Like, remember to ask about this because I've just been. It's one of those things. It's like moments like that. If somebody, I like Jordan Rudess, fine, but like those are things that can be grating. And like you said, it's 10 seconds, whatever. It doesn't ruin the song, but it's just like super serious song, and then like, like just out of nowhere in the middle of it. I don't know. It's cool. He probably really felt strongly needed to be there, so they let him have it. Yeah.
Hey, they could have all it could have all been a big joke to them, and we're just taking it way too seriously.
Well, and
You
we
know,
talked a lot about that with the Tool podcast, right? I mean, that's
we did. It happens to everybody. I know that. And you know, I've read some when we were preparing for the Tool podcast. I did read some interviews that Maynard gave, and it did kind of frame some of that into more perspective. That you know, sometimes it's a joke. Well, he was a little more emphatic about it, but sometimes it's a joke, sometimes it's serious. But yeah, there's humor in it. Try not to take everything so seriously. So hey, they could have just been sitting around and said, "Hey, that's really goofy. It makes us feel good." So we put it on the album, and that's what it's all about. When you're creating art, when you're doing something as a project, that's at most of it's about you're the artist, right? You are the guys that we're trusting are going to make a good tune. So it's really about your instincts. And if you all sit around, you're thinking, hey, this is kind of goofy. It sounds cool. Great. When I listen to Typo Negative, I get all that stuff. When they do something funny, I hear it. It makes me laugh, and I recognize it immediately. I don't know why. I just don't take Typo Negative that seriously, but I love them, right? Same, but with Tool, I don't always get that. I heard some breakdowns of where some of the humor is in a lot of Tool songs, and some of it's obvious and some of it's not. And I think to myself, well, there's a band that I really like, but I didn't get it. I didn't hear all of it. And Dream Theater, for all I know, this is just all good fun to them. So, kind of just got to take it in stride. But hey, we're nitpicky fans. We do a podcast on it. That's what we do. But you're right. It's a little cheesy. It doesn't ruin the song, but I think it takes away from it a little bit. But hey, it's their song. I either like it or I don't.
all right, Carl. I hope, this next one we might be divided here. I'm not sure. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but the next track is Honor Thy Father. Now, Carl, time has not been kind to this song for me. I initially, when I started this podcast off telling my new metal story, and initially this song was something I tolerated, but if I was going to be honest with you and give you a ranking, this is definitely in my top three least favorite Dream Theater songs, and I think it is a good example of everything I dislike about the band on their later records. I feel like the genesis begins with it on like here, and basically the song it's a very groovy, kind of very new metal-y sounding riff, and it very famously features sections that have some ill-advised rapping from James LaBrie. The song it was written. Mike Portnoy wanted to write a song, a quote-unquote hate song about his stepfather, and the song features a huge I want to call it like an instrumental break about 2/3 the way through, where samples from many different movies, mostly from Magnolia, are layered on top of the band kind of just riffing on a jam. The song is, to me, I've always felt like Honor Thy Father is 10 minutes. It would be like the type of thing that if we were in a room jamming on a riff, and we just hit record and then hit stop. Like, it's just, there's no development to it. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't work at all. There's not really any melody to it. And I think the lyrics, this is, as much as I like Mike Portnoy writing This Dying Soul, I think this is an example of him. This is not the kind of lyrics I need from him. It comes off as petty. It doesn't work. He's allowed to write about whomever, however he wants, but just for you and me, just as two men, I don't think it's ever appropriate to talk about your family publicly, and I certainly wouldn't write a song to them in this way. I think, whatever. I guess if you're gonna do it, but then to go in interviews and say who it's about, that's, I don't know. This is kind of the beginning of something that becomes more and more apparent over the years, that maybe there's an element of his personality that I just don't vibe with, and it's all good, and I'm not trying to bring him down, but we are doing a podcast and I'm allowed to give my opinion, and my opinion is this song is weak, and my biggest complaint really is that there are minutes. There's a point here, there's a point there, there's parts that work, and if they had gone back to it and said, okay, this part works and this part doesn't work, they could have turned this into an awesome 6-minute song, an awesome song. But instead, I think it's just overwrought and doesn't work at all. What are your thoughts? Am I being way too harsh here?
Well, no, because I would expect most people to have strong opinions about family, and I expect most people to have strong opinions about, how you talk about family or how you perceive it or how you display family. So I don't think it's too harsh. I mean, like you said, everybody's going to do it the way that they do it, right? I'm not the kind of person either who's going to go around and say, well, I wrote this song about this guy and this is the type of person he is. But at the same time, I don't think I have anybody in my close family like this either. I have a stepmother. We're not close. We're not we don't know a lot about each other, I don't think, and we don't talk a lot, but she's a good person. I like her as a person. I love the fact that her and my father are together, and I think that, as good of a relationship as two people can have, I think that they fit together and they work well together. She was never mean to me or anything like that, but I know people who've had family members that are very bad people. I do know some people like that. I know some people who think that they have family members that are bad people, and you hear their stories and you think to yourselves, well, everybody thinks something like that maybe sometimes, and it kind of the verdict's out. But I know some people I trust very much who I believe with them also that they have family members that are really bad people, and I've never had to get something like that off my chest. I've never had to look at a family member and in fear, or for whatever reasons in the moment. It could be fear, it could be trepidation, it could be because you're taken off guard. I've never had to not say something to them that I had to say eventually. I've never had family members that I need to warn other people about. I've never had someone where I said, this person's a bad person, and that's why I wrote this tune about. I don't write tunes about emotional things. I'm not an emotional person anyway, so I think I kind of have a hard time understanding that to begin with. So you're not being too harsh. If you don't have a strong opinion about family and how people perceive and talk about their family, I probably wouldn't trust you just as a person. Everybody should have strong opinions about that. Whether I agree with them or not, everybody should have strong opinions about it. Now, I do agree with you. It's not how I would display anything like that. I would kind of keep that. I would just keep that so in house. I would maybe even barely write a lyric about it. I'm just not that kind of person. But so I don't fault anybody for writing that lyric. I don't fault anybody for displaying it or for saying who it's about. Everybody's dynamic is different. So that point aside, I just don't really dig the lyrics too much. There are some points on here. There are some things on the lyrics that I like. I like some of the metaphors. I like "you're the rotted root in the family tree." There are some things on here that are kind of poetic, but seem kind of direct that I would like to know what they're about. I like I tried your 4-bill therapy. I tried to make amends. I kind of like that. I want to know what that 4-bill therapy refers to. I like some of the lyrical moments on here, but overall, the lyrics and the rap they're not my thing. But it sounds definitely like something someone's getting off their chest. And obviously, people write lyrics from themselves. They don't write lyrics for me. And nobody's going to like everybody's lyrics, and I'm sure everybody knows that. But so, yeah, I don't really dig the lyrics too much. The tune, like you said, I'm kind of on the same page with you. There are moments, there are riffs. I like the way the song opens, and I like some of the riffs sprinkled in between. I'm almost wondering if this was an example of there was just too much to say, and we had to write a song around having so much to say. Now, I am not a gifted songwriter. You write songs very well. You write them and you can put them together and call it a tune. Dream Theater obviously writes them very well. I'm not that. I don't have as gifted a mind for putting it together and calling it a day. So my criticism on here might be kind of take it for a grain of salt, but it just seems like there's so much to say, and even with such a long tune. We're talking about a tune that's 10 minutes long. That might not be a long Dream Theater tune, but that's a long tune. It's really kind of a lot to fit in, I think. If I was a person trying to put a lyrical melody together, and I've done that. I've tried to put lyrical melodies together. I would have a really hard time with this, which, again, really kind of highlights Labrie. Whether I don't love his singing on it. It's not my favorite melodically. It's not my favorite lyrically. It's not my favorite with the rap. And I don't know whose idea it was, but I think that he does a good job, at least, of trying to fit it all in. And you know what? For having a lot to say, the band as a whole does a good job of fitting the words in there. I get the song. I get the structure of it, right? It's not like I'm lost on it or that it's lost on me. I just don't dig it as much. So 15 minutes later, there's my diatribe. It's certainly the beginning of not my favorite parts of the album.
Yes, but not your least favorite song ever.
Oh, certainly not my least favorite song ever. I could think of a bunch of Dream Theater songs that I like way less than this. In fact, you know what? It may have been high on my pile of tunes I don't like. Well, first, when I heard the album, I loved the whole album. And maybe after the years went by, I kind of developed more of a mature opinion, differentiating from one tune to another. At some point, this might have been one of my least favorite tunes until The Astonishing comes out, and now I have like an album and a half's worth of least favorite tunes. But we'll get to that some other time. We'll get to that in 2018. But for right now, no, it's not the worst song they have. It certainly isn't the worst song on the album. It's not their worst lyrics either. I mean, we got to get the kind of Tuscany to get to worst lyrics ever.
You are a voice of reason this morning, and yet you know what? Let me put it this way. So because everything you said about the lyrical content, you're actually almost making me second guess myself. But it's because you're right, and actually, the more I think about it, maybe it just doesn't. It rubs me the wrong way. But maybe if it's in a better package, I'm not as annoyed by it all. But let me give you you got a second here? Let me just double down on this statement that I just don't like this song, just for the sake of counterpoint here. So this song, Carl, I've been in bands, I've made a lot of records, and I've worked with a lot of different people, and I've not done anything on the level of Dream Theater. I'm not trying to act like I have, but just like a sports writer doesn't need to have won a Super Bowl to have an opinion on a football team, I think I'm going to make this opinion with that caveat. So when you're working with an artist, this Dying Soul is an example of James LaBrie being handed a bunch of lyrics in a song that doesn't have a strong apparent melody, and he makes it work, and it works really well. Honor Thy Father is the opposite happens. He's handed the lyrics and a song, and I know the way Mike Portnoy, especially the way he talks about how he does the process, he really works out the melody. I know a lot of this is his impetus. He sits there and dictates how he wants the cadence to be. The section in the song, the first verse where LaBrie's rapping, the choruses, none of these play to his strengths. So Carl, I've made records with guys. I've been in the vocal booth with somebody, and you're sitting there and you're listening to a guy work on a song vocally, and everybody realizes the same time, like, this isn't working. And rather than just being completely stubborn and just continuing to slam that square peg into a round hole, sometimes you just go, you know what? Time out here. There's a different way to do this. We can do something that plays to your strengths. And I got a CD here. I got the Train of Thought CD. I'm opening it up here. I'm looking on the back, and it says co-produced by John Petrucci and Mike Portnoy. So unfortunately, I place the blame on both of them. That probably the most cringeworthy moment in their entire catalog is James LaBrie trying to rap an entire verse in a song. And the fact that neither of them said, time out, wait, you know what, guys? This isn't working. This just doesn't work. James is an amazing singer. There's got to be a different approach. Or with the choruses, or with an ill-advised, the screaming that just doesn't work. Like the parts after the choruses where he's screaming with this distortion on his voice. None of it works. And I guess the part that annoys me so much is that with these self-produced albums that are written in 3 weeks, if there was somebody else in the room to be like, time out, guys, can we just take an hour and think of a melody here? Or can we think of a different way to, I don't want to change the lyrics. Let's just think of a different approach. I think you get a better song. But what I think you have is you've got, and I guess it's both of their blame, though. I am blaming it on Portnoy because he wrote the lyrics, but I know they both produced the record. Two guys that were just not interested in maybe taking a different approach. It just annoys the hell out of me. And if I didn't know so much about the process because of their videos and stuff, I might not be as annoyed, or I might be more prone to blame LaBrie. Maybe he came up with the rapping, but I know that's not the case. So that's the end of my rant on Honor Thy Father, but that is my point. I just think it doesn't work, and I blame them for, not putting every member of the band in a position to succeed on the song because of very ill-advised arrangements and lyrics and vocal melodies.
Certainly a poor idea. There's a handful of poor ideas on the album. So yeah, no matter how we cut it, you're right. I mean, somebody was listening to that and somebody thought it was a good idea, unless it was supposed to be a joke. And the joke is that they never told anybody, which I doubt. So you're right.
The next track, Carl, is the shortest song on the record. It is Vacant. A musical contribution it's credited just to Myung and Rudis. It's got a sparse piano piece, James LaBrie singing a vocal, and then there's a cello on it. A very beautiful, haunting song. Apparently, the lyrics LaBrie wrote about his daughter who actually fell into a coma, and kind of the idea that, what he was feeling in that moment before she woke up. A very touching thing. My only complaint with Vacant is, you'll read criticisms about LaBrie and his kind of very breathy, kind of very almost show tune-esque way of singing at times. He can be very overly dramatic, and I like it, and I think it works. And I think on this song, maybe a bit of an understated vocal might have worked better. It's very like, hey, you, like just very like, just it's a little bit much for a sparse arrangement, but I'm really picking nits there. It's a good track. I enjoy it. It's a nice break on the record, and I think it's a beautiful, haunting melody and lyric. You have any thoughts on Vacant?
I've gone back and forth with how much I've liked it and not, but I've always enjoyed it. I think that, especially on such a heavy album, it makes a really good tune to chuck in the
Yes.
middle. So I ain't mad at it. I can go back and forth on different ways to sing it. Maybe they tried it with the less breathy and less dramatic, and maybe it didn't work. I have no idea, but I could picture it going either way. Sometimes I listen to it and I think this is really good. Sometimes I listen and I think maybe that it's not so much. And I go back though. Sometimes I go back and I think to Disappear on 6 Degrees and think this is the perfect way to do the understated song. But you don't want a band to repeat themselves over and over again. So it's different. I like it though. I mean, I certainly like it better than Honor Thy Father. If this was the 4th track on the album and then they finished it off with some good solid rockers, it would be great. But yeah, we're nitpicking a little. That's what we do. That's why we got the podcast, right? The breathiness is a little much, I think. Maybe dial it back a bit. But hey, they're the ones making the money. I'm just sitting here talking about it. So
The next track on the record, so Vacant kind of has a musical theme akin to the following track, Stream of Consciousness, which is the longest Dream Theater instrumental to date. And it is an instrumental. It's an 11-minute song. It kind of has a bunch of different sections. There's some stuff that's really cool on here. There's some stuff that I don't think works as well. It feels at times like a Liquid Tension experiment song. It is kind of thrown together. Thus the song, the title, Stream of Consciousness. And I think that for me, and I've said this over and over on these podcasts, I'm not an instrumental guy. It doesn't. I really like vocals and lyrics and melodies. So the song is cool. I think Stream of Consciousness, if it's a 6-minute instrumental, and I know people are shaking their head like, what 7 minutes would you cut out? For me, it's like 5 minutes too long. There's a lot of repetition. It's cool. I like it. There was a contest actually, Carl, that they posted the arrangement from their dry erase board back in the day for this song, and they bands could write a song using the arrangement, but like whatever music they wanted to it, and submit it to Dream Theater. They're going to pick a winner, and I believe the band that would end up becoming, or the band that was Redemption, I want to say was the band that won said contest. So Redemption, which James LaBrie would actually end up guesting on one of their records. So kind of a cool little tidbit there. But what are your thoughts on Stream of Consciousness? I'll just say this doesn't do anything for me.
no, I don't like the tune, and it's not just that it's too long. I don't even necessarily think I like the sections on here that I'm supposed to like. Like if I were to tell you this is what I like about music, you're like, oh, you would like these parts of the Stream of Consciousness. I don't really think I like any of the tune. There were times when I think I liked parts of the song, but I don't. I would like to, but not so much my thing. It's not like I can tell you it's a bad tune. I mean, I know there's a lot of Dream Theater fans who love the song, right? I can't say that, hey, if you're a Dream Theater fan, steer clear of this one. So this is really my own thing, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a good song. The arrangement's really all over the place. It just doesn't seem like there's like a clear direction for it, And I might even go a step further. I would just scrap the entire thing. I can't envision cutting the song in half and there
Yeah.
still being a good tune in there. Like I can do that with Honor Thy Father. Like with Honor Thy Father, I can say, hey, maybe you trim it this way. I would really enjoy it. I can't really do that with this tune. Maybe I just don't get it. That's very possible. When I first got the album, like I said, I liked the whole album, and I don't know if I was forcing myself to or not, but as time goes on, I really just don't think this one at all. Like you said, it does nothing for me.
Well, and I want to correct myself real quick there. The winner of the contest was not Redemption. They were one of the runner-ups. The winner was actually Andy Rowland and Ant Law. So just before I offend anybody. My issue with, I guess, like, so think of your favorite instrumentals from Dream Theater. So, like, let's talk about, so Hell's Kitchen, Erotomania, Eve, like any of those, the Overture, any of those songs, I think I would actually take over. I would actually take the Overture from 6 Degrees over this. And I think the thing that they all have in common is they're all like half as long. So I just think that at some point, it's not Liquid Tension Experiment. When you listen to the Liquid Tension Experiment records, if you like either of those, it's pretty commonplace. Like all the tracks are 10, 11, 16 minutes long. It's just jamming and noodling. If that's what you're going for, it's all right there. It's all in one spot. But this is a Dream Theater record. And I guess this is like one of those, another example of a misstep where perhaps this was too much of something. Again, if somebody had been in the room, they might have said, guys, this whole thing's just a mess. Let's just start over. But I often see this ranked at the top of people's lists as favorite instrumentals. I know Progsphere did a ranking a couple years back where I think this was like number 1 or number 2 on the list. They did an article ranking all the Dream Theater instrumentals. Like, so it fares highly. We might be in the minority here, but in my opinion, it doesn't work. And I would be honest with you, I skip it every time. It's too much. Not into it. Carl, the final track and the longest track on the record is the 14-minute long In the Name of God. Now, In the Name of God was a song that kind of was born out of a jam that was occurring at sound checks on the previous tour. And it features lyrics written by John Petrucci and has a very obviously kind of deals with the idea of cult worship and cult heroes, and the subject matter in the lyrics is kind of interesting and talks about a lot of different things, but the song itself is definitely, it's kind of like 3 songs in one. It has very definitive sections, a crazy instrumental section in the middle. You know what? I'll say that I like this song, but I don't love it, and I want to hear your thoughts before I give mine.
Yeah, it's okay. It's after Endless Sacrifice, it's the best song on the album. So if you don't have 2 of This Dying Soul and you need to close out the album, this maybe would have been the best one. I could maybe flip this an Endless Sacrifice to close it out, but it's interesting to close it out with that kind of large, dramatic, tune. And I do like large. I do love large, like, drama in music. Most of the time, I don't dig tackling religious topics in rock music lyrically. Not because, I'm not a person who believes in God. And most days when I'm not conflicted with myself, I don't believe that there is a God. I personally have a great respect and reverence for those who do. However, I tend to think that rock musicians, when they handle religion, a lot of times they use just a couple buzz phrases to seem introspective, and I think a lot of times they're handling it on a very surface level. Here's a topic, right? Here's an institution, a part of human nature that for as long as humans have existed, this function in human nature that exists to explain things people can't explain themselves, and it's gone on for thousands and thousands of years. And sometimes I hear people tackle that lyrically, such a varied topic, such a long and deep thing, and I think to myself, you tackled it like an idiot, and it's so surface level and things like that. And I'm kind of over it in rock music for the most part. Lyrically here, it does kind of touch on some things that I think are very important. Religiously, from someone who's been a religious person and not, and for someone who kind of respects people and their religions, I think that this speaks to a lot of things that bother a lot of people about it. The idea of claiming something in the name of something when it might not have anything to do with that. There's a lot of motivations for the way people do things, and there's a lot of motivations for the reasons they claim they've done things, and it's interesting to me. So I lyrically, I actually do like the song a lot. I think that lyrically this tackles, and they've done this a couple times, but I think lyrically it does tackle a deep and complicated topic in a way that's kind of deep and complicated. I think that lyrically it kind of does the topic justice. And if one were to just read the lyrics, it's kind of thought-provoking, and I think it's good for a conversation. And the tune's okay. Again, it's too long. My only complaint with this song is that it's too long. And some of the parts that we could really just do without, we really could just do without, Like if we just didn't have it, I think the song would be great. So certainly not the worst Dream Theater song ever. From an album that was being where the intent was to try to do a Balls to the Walls metal album, doesn't quite fit. For trying to do a modern metal album, yeah, it kind of really does fit, and I can see it fitting, but certainly not my favorite tune. However, I don't skip it. When I get to the tune, I listen to it. I deal with the things about it that I don't quite like, and just kind of move on to the stuff that I do.
Yeah, your point on the lyrical topics is well said, well stated. From a musical standpoint, I love the intro, I love the riff, I love the kind of bass groove, but then you get to the chorus, and the chorus to me is probably the weakest part of the song, and I really feel like the chorus and kind of the way it's sung by Labrie, it's very monotonous, and the fact that you hear the chorus, I don't know, 3 or 4 times in the next 6 minutes, it just really wears on you. The parts in between the chorus, so each of the verses, which are different, and then the whole middle section, the vocal section after the third chorus, I think all of that stuff is gold. I love it. I love the breakdown. I like the instrumental section, though, again, I think that like 5 minutes of noodling should be 2 minutes. And then you get back to the final chorus and the outro. So, like, to me, it's a 14-minute song, and I think I love 6 or 7 minutes of it. And I think if it was those 6 and 7 minutes at a better chorus, it would be my favorite closer of any Dream Theater record. But instead, it's just it's an okay song. Now, I know people, again, love this song. Love it. This record, I like divisive things. I tend to gravitate towards things. The things I like the best are usually things that are really polarizing. Because I like when artists do something brazenly, without concern. When they just do something that they feel strongly about and there's no concessions. It's just a full-on statement. And in this record, in that instance, I feel like this record is very much, we're just going to make this record the way we want. We're going to write it in 3 weeks. We're not going to we're not going to think twice about anything. I admire that. But this song is an example, again, of that I kind of talked about with Honor Thy Father, where I think a little editing, a little time away and coming back and looking at it could have made a better song. And so, unfortunately, when you kind of open and shut a case in, 3 weeks, you don't give yourself that opportunity. And Carl, there's a lot of amazing records that have been made in a week, and there's a lot of crappy records that have been made in a week. I think when you're a band of this stature, the benefit you have over just about everybody else, the thing you've afforded yourself, is the opportunity to go back because you have time, you have money. You have the money to do it. You can spend the time in the studio and really work on stuff. And so I guess that's the hard part with me, is why you wouldn't do it, because the thing I hate most in life is good enough. I hate the idea of good enough.
Yes.
I hate it at work. I've worked with people my whole life. Good enough. I don't like it at the gym. I don't like it in anything. I don't like good enough. I don't like it. I don't like it in myself. I don't like it. I push myself incredibly hard, and I am mediocre at everything I do in life, but at least I'm doing the best I can because I've never said good enough. If I said good enough, I don't know what I'd be. I'd be nothing. I just don't like good enough. And I feel like if I had the gifts and the talent and the time and money, that would be the shame that you're saying good. And this record, this song, parts of this record, it really just feels like that was the motto, Good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough, guys. And maybe I'm wrong.
I mean,
and I'm not
compared with their prior work, yes.
Yes. I'm not trying to insult them or insult anybody, but that's what it feels like. And, so that sums up my thoughts on in the Name of God. I like the solo from Petrucci in it. I like one of the main solo, but it's just, the song's kind of a hot mess. I don't know, but I don't skip it. When I listen to this record, I listen to tracks 1, 2, 3, and 7. That is what I listen to.
Yes. That is correct.
And
Sometimes I'll still listen to 5.
Yes. But either way, that's about 40 minutes of music. And I am a fan. I like the album format. I feel like 38 to 42 minutes is the perfect length for a record. All of my favorite classic rock albums, I mean, that's what works. And so in that respect, you've got a good record here. It's the other half hour that I just don't care for.
There's like a power hour and a half hour not so power hour.
Yeah. So, all right. Wow. So we've talked a lot about, this is probably the first podcast we've done on Dream Theater in a while where we haven't just been kind of just going off about how great the whole thing is. So
it was starting to sound like for a minute that we were just useless fan wankers and who had almost nothing bad to say.
So kind of jumping back on that point you made at the top of the podcast, now given the benefit of retrospect, this is 14 years old, and, you not only knew you knew it as the follow up to 6 Degrees, which was one of your favorite records, which you're still a fan of, but now you know it given the context of everything that is to come. Is Train of Thought, is it best listened to as just kind of its own special thing in their catalog? It's their heavy metal record, or is it something else? Is it the beginning of the end? Is it a turning point for the band?
Well, it's not. I don't think it's best listened to as their heavy metal record, only because maybe not production wise, but I still think Awake does heavier better. Also, even if I didn't think that, Systematic Chaos is a heavier album. I think.
Yeah.
I think that they've done more heavy than this. So if you're trying to peg the prog rock album and the heavy album and the artsy album, if you're trying to say which of their albums are the most of these individual categories, I don't think it fits. I think that would probably still... We'd have to do the podcast because I'm fuzzy, but I'd probably still say that goes to Systematic Chaos. I think Train of Thought is best listened to as a bridge between 6 Degrees and Octavarium. Back in the day, like when I first got Octavarium, I actually didn't like it nearly as much as Train of Thought. And I thought to myself, Octavarium is going to be the beginning of the end in such dramatic fan fashion, right? And then I grew up a little bit, and then I realized, well, it's a band. It's not the beginning of the end of anything, but I like Octavarium a lot less personally. So to me, Train of Thought is a few tracks that get you from 6 Degrees to Octavarium.
Well, it's interesting. That's a really good point. I feel like, yes, that they do kind of, it benefits given the context of where it sits in their catalog. But the other thing that I've always looked at it as, you have Awake and Falling into Infinity are kind of flip sides of time period of a coin. And then these two records felt analogous to that, in that you have, a dark, heavy record followed by maybe a more, introspective, maybe not pop, but just a more atmospheric record, not something leaning so much on muscle. And to me, that has always been kind of where I would put these records, or kind of how I think of them and group them in my head. I just feel like, this and Octavarium maybe don't yield the same results as their counterparts. There may be diminished returns here. But this record, to me, the way it was recorded and produced is kind of becomes the process for the next few records that follow. And I think that the problems I have with this record don't go away and are probably directly tied to the way the albums are being written and recorded. And that's a shame to me, because I think, again, if you have the time and money and energy, why wouldn't you want to make something better? But this record is a great example of the best elements of Dream Theater, is the metal side of Dream Theater, and then maybe the worst elements at the same time. It shows off the strengths of James LaBrie and then painfully shows off the weaknesses. And the rest of the band sounds great throughout. I mean, Portnoy's drumming is up front in the mix, and he drums the shit out of these songs. I mean, just from a pure...
Yeah, performance-wise, there's so much to like. Like, if you were just really listening to individual performances, Jesus Christ, it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Rudis, I think he, for the most part, other than a couple points, he fits in. I really like the piano in The Name of God. I think it sits well in the mix. There's a lot to like here. It's just not 6 Degrees, and that was probably... I liked it so much at the time because I was so excited for the next record, because I was such a fan of 6 Degrees. They had been on such a roll, but then it lost its staying power with me. I would be lying to you if I said that a year after this came out, I was still listening to it regularly, because I wasn't. I was listening to 6 Degrees, and I was listening to Scenes from a Memory, and I was listening to Falling into Infinity. But this record, only when I was in that mood for something crushing and heavy, and then even then, almost immediately it became, I just listened to the first 3 tracks and then I move on.
Yes.
It just didn't work beyond that. So, all right, man.
Well, we can't finish this out without saying I do like Peter Criss's solo album way more than Train of Thought.
What? Are you serious?
Yes.
God.
I would take, as a whole entire album, I would take the Peter Criss solo album over Train of Thought.
I feel like you're just saying it to say it, because that can't be true.
No, it's totally true. It's such a good album. I swear to God, it's not like a great hard rock Kiss album, but it's such a good album. I enjoy it much more than I enjoy Train of Thought. Hey, I enjoy Music of the Elder more than Train of Thought. obviously we're not getting not for individual performances. We're not talking about like a talented piece of music. I'm just saying I probably enjoy 70% of the music from The Elder. I probably enjoy 90 or 95% of Peter Criss's solo album. I enjoy maybe a third, of Train of Thought. Can't help it. Numbers don't lie.
All right, man. So let's dive into the fun stuff now. What's your favorite song off this record?
Oh, this Dying Soul.
All right, you got it. What are your favorite performances? Do you think anybody stands out?
It's all on this Dying Soul.
Yeah, just
Everything I like about the album's on this Dying Soul. The solo, like the lead work on it's great. And I do like, I know that I kind of get down on Jordan Brutus for his kind of keyboard work and the interplay between him and John that seemed kind of, we're both wizards at the thing that we do, and maybe it gets a little boring, but I think it really works on this Dying Soul. Bass playing, I love John Myung. I just don't know if there's a lot that individually stands out bass playing wise of what he does anymore. He fills a sonic space. He's very good, right? But we're not getting Metropolis moments, from him anymore, right? We're not getting a lot of standout things. We're getting a guy who's really good at playing very fast, very well, and kind of holding these songs together, which there's nothing wrong with that from a bass player, but we're not getting, we're not getting Billy Sheehan moments from the guy. These standout things that are kind of his own thing. We're not getting that. So obviously he holds In the Name of God together very well at many points, which I think is kind of a good tribute to him. But I can't really tell you. This thing with John Myung stands out. Not lyrically anymore, not playing wise anymore. He just kind of follows or holds a song structure together, really. So, but drumming wise, the keyboards, the lead work from John, and again the singing from James Abree. Everything I like about this album is just wrapped up in the one song.
This is going to be so embarrassing, but that was like exactly what I was going to say. Like, I don't need to answer any of these questions. The favorite song,
yes,
and performance and lyrical contribution, everything you could say, whatever category you want to do, I would just say this Dying Soul is just like that's.
Yeah,
I think James. I love the vocal. I just love all the different things he does. I love it. I think it's great. I think it works. I think it's probably the strongest chorus on the record, though that's not really a chorus that gets repeated a lot. But I love the whole thing. It's a really good example of a heavy Dream Theater song and a worthy addition to the, it started with The Glass Prison. Probably this and The Glass Prison are the only two entries to that suite that I enjoy. No, I take that back. Root of All Evil I like a lot too, but after that, I think this might be the high point of that song if we're listening to it all the way through. I know you like Shattered Fortress, but
yes, I do. I not as much, obviously. It kind of goes in order for me. But Shattered Fortress is good. I do like it, but not nearly as much as like this Dying Soul or I mean Root of All Evil's cool. I actually think I like Shattered Fortress more than Root of All Evil.
Huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and I guess the last thing is, before we give our parting thoughts, where do we, we did the Dream Theater podcast so long ago, the one where we went through like their whole career. It's probably a year ago, maybe a little bit less than a year ago. It was last spring. So yeah. I can't remember what I said, but I'm just curious now. I've listened to a lot of their catalog in the last couple of months, especially doing these podcasts. Where do you put this record? Where do you rank it now? With their other, what do they got? 13 records. Where do you put this record? Middle of the pack, back of the pack?
I mean, if between Images, up, all right, so up in time, right, up through where we are currently, between When Dream and Day Unite, Images, Awake, Falling, Scenes from a Memory, 6 Degrees, Train of Thought for me, as far as order of enjoyment, is just above When Dream and Day Unite. I'll take Images, Awake, Falling, Scenes, and 6 Degrees all over both of those, and it would be at the bottom of the pack. As their category as a whole, I mean, I like Dramatic Turn of Events. I think we have to get to the podcast, refresh my memory, but I think I like Black Clouds better. I like the self-titled, I think, better. And I like Train of Thought better than Systematic Chaos. I mean, I would put Systematic Chaos, I might even put that below When Dream and Day Unite as for their whole catalog as order of enjoyment. So I mean, with their their whole catalog, it may be it's still kind of low. It's pretty low in the mix. If I were to rank all the albums, it wouldn't fare very well.
No, I completely agree. I mean, that was going to be my take on it too. Like, I can't take it over anything that's come before it. I guess I always leave Wind and Dream and Day Unite out because it's not apples to apples.
Yeah, it really is. And
So,
it's
but
very
I wouldn't
different.
any of those. The 5 records that come before it, I don't take it over any of those. So in that regard, it represents a low point, and perhaps a turning point. But really, it's a low point in that most of what comes after it, I like better. I like Octavarium. As a record better. I actually love Octavarium. That might be a divisive podcast because I rank that very high for them. I don't like Systematic Chaos all that much, but I probably like it equally as much as Train of Thought. And if I'm listening to either record, I enjoy more off of Systematic Chaos, so I probably would rank that higher. I probably would rank Black Clouds higher. I like Dramatic Turn of Events. I really like the self-titled. I might only, honestly, and we might have a hard time with The Astonishing. The Astonishing, I like 7 or 8 songs off of it. I just don't like, I think it's an overbloated mess, but if those 7 or 8 songs might add up to more time than the time I like off of this record. It might be my least favorite Dream Theater record. It's definitely bottom 3. And I have a hard time saying that because if you ask me without me running through it like that, I would say, oh, it's not their worst. I like it. It's okay. But if I'm being honest, it's really one of the records I listen to the least from them. I very rarely revisit it. There's not a lot there I go to. And even listening to it for this podcast was painful. It was painful listening to Honor Thy Father all the way through. I never need to hear that song again. Like, ever. And like, that's sad to say. Like, I might live another 40 or 50 years, God hoping, and I will never listen to that song again. It's just not a good song. So, and I can't say that about just about anything else they've released. So, yeah. This was the first time that I don't have much good to say, though. I hope we haven't really trashed the record, but
We kind of did, but that's okay. We'll make up for it. We could talk to Varium. We'll be a little nicer.
what are your parting thoughts on Train of Thought?
Just don't ever do it again. That's we didn't talk about this.
Or else.
It might be my favorite album cover.
Oh, it's the artwork is so good. That's the bummer.
We almost missed talking about that. No, the artwork is great. And it wasn't even just the album cover. Like, everything about the artwork was great.
Yeah, the artwork is amazing. Yeah, my parting thought is that I admire the idea, and I give them an A for inspiration, but I give them, a C- for execution. I just don't think it's their best work, and I really think the process worked against them. The packaging, the concept behind it, the idea of making a dark, heavy record, I'm all about that. But this doesn't work, at least not well. And, I'm glad that I've got, I would say that the first 3 tracks are, those are great, strong songs. This Dying Soul is one of my favorite rippers from these guys. So there's some good stuff on here, but it's not a great record from start to finish, and not something you should ever play, in the car when you're driving a girl you're really into someplace far away.
Don't
just pop
ever play Dream Theater to impress a girl. Just don't.
Yeah.
Don't impress a girl with your knowledge of Star Trek or Star Wars. Don't try to impress a girl with Dream Theater. If you want to impress a girl, talk to her about things that she likes. Really simple.
Yeah. You got to grab that Drake CD and you just pop it in and pretend like you know what's going on and you'll be good. But other than that, yeah, you're really just lighting a beacon for everybody around you to show how nerdy you are.
Yeah. Yes. Hey,
thanks a lot, Drew.
The artwork on here, by the way, I don't know the story about their artwork for a lot of their other albums, but I know the guy who did the artwork on here. His last name is Yulesman or something like that. He's actually like a renowned photographer. He's got like photos in museums all over the world. And he's done a couple media, like a couple entertainment things. I think that he did some pictures for some sci-fi shows and whatnot, like not like a ton, but he did the album cover for this, obviously, because we just talked about it. And he also did the album cover for a Bon Jovi album called This House Is Not For Sale. It was Bon Jovi.
Oh, he did.
It's actually a pretty good picture. The album probably sucks because it's Bon Jovi released in 2000s. But the picture's good though. So good job, Mr. Yulesman.
Well, I'm just going to go one more tangent real quick. So I I know a lot of people don't care about packaging or artwork, and I know in this day and age, because your music, you might never actually see the physical copy. It's literally just a 400 by 400 pixel JPEG on your phone is all you ever know of the record. So, I get that it's a lost art, but as a guy who buys vinyl, a guy who likes to sit down and deliberately listen to music, and I spend a lot of time doing it, I love that aspect. And so I give them a lot of credit because up to this point and through this record, and even with Octavarium, the band continued to push the envelope with, I think, the artistic presentation of their music. And I don't know who's... I'm assuming Petrucci and Portnoy are largely responsible for that, but I don't really know the division of labor on that kind of stuff. But I give them a lot of credit because that to me means something. That I really fight for a record and really give it a chance when I'm enamored with the way it's packaged. It's a lot harder to just dismiss something when you see it as a conceptual piece of art, and that aspect of it is so resonating with you. You give it more listens, I think. At least I do. And we'll get to this later on, but that's what makes records like A Dramatic Turn of Events so egregious to me. Like when it's just clip art that like somebody threw together on a computer in 10 minutes, it's just a lot harder to be really into it. And I will say that the record, that part of the band has suffered since Portnoy's departure, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of any of the 3 album covers that have come since he left. I think they all kind of suck.
Yes, I agree.
It is not the end of the world, but it just is what it is. But Dramatic Turn of Events was one of the... I know there's lots of forum posts and pages devoted to just how egregious and clip arty that whole thing is, and like really bad. Like band asleep at the wheel, nobody actively interested in the artwork or presentation, just letting the record company figure it out results in horrible packaging. So, or you can like seek out the work from some renowned artist and put together like the coolest CD book I've ever looked at. I don't know. One or the other. Whatever you want to do, guys.